You're welcome to my channel. This is Jedala Fashion Guide. In today's video, we are going to be learning how to draft a one-piece corset pattern with armhole and shoulder. This is the measurement you are going to be working with. We're going to be making use of this brown paper for our pattern, and then we are only going to be drafting from the waist, so from the shoulder to the waist. So the measurement you are working with: shoulder to bust 10 inches, shoulder to underbust 13, shoulder to waist 15, and then the armhole depth is 7 inches. The bust we are working with is 34, the underbust is 24, and the waist is 26. The shoulder measurement is 14, which divided into 2, that gave us 7 inches, and then the nipple to nipple point is 7 inches divided by 2 is 3.5. For this pattern, you need a full scale bodice, or you need a basic bodice pattern. Okay, half scale bodice pattern. So I have some lines drawn out here already. I've taken the shoulder measurement, shoulder divided by 2. I've not added any seam allowance to this. When you're transferring to fabric, you can do that. And then I've measured out a neckline of 3.5 inches. I've gone ahead to take the shoulder slant of 1 inch, and then I've also marked out the armhole depth of 7 inches. So I'm going to impute the armhole now, the armhole curve. So I'll get half of that, which is 0.5. I go in ½ inch inside. So this is our armhole curve, and then on this chest line we'll impute the bust circumference divided by 4, which is 8.5. So this is where the armhole length you get. So this becomes the chest line. So this is our chest line, and then this is the bust line, and then this is the underbust and waistline. I'll just use my marker now to highlight the major lines that we have drawn out, and then label our pattern. So we have the shoulder line here, chest line, bust line, underbust. So this is the chest line, this is the bust line, underbust line, and this is our waist line. And of course we have marked out the armhole curve. We do not really need this upper neckline for this corset, because we use the corset neckline. So I'll impute the dart. The dart is 3.5. So on the chest line, 3.5 all the way down. I'll also extend it to the neckline. So with my long roller, I'll just draw that, connect all those lines. Now for a normal bodice pattern, though we usually take a waist dart of ½ inch on both sides, and then we draw like a triangle connecting towards the bust point, like this. So this is for a regular basic bodice pattern. But for this pattern, we are going to be we are going to be will I say adjusting this dart. Now I'm going to be adjusting it by 1/2 inch, so I'll increase the waist dart by 1/2, and also the under bust by 1/2. So this depends on your bust. If your bust is big, then you may want to take 1 inch dart on both sides of the under bust and 1 inch dart on both sides of the waistline. So I'm going to connect this using the curve ruler like this. So I use my marker to highlight that. So this is what you have to do, and then from the under bust to the waist, and from here you just connect it down straight. So that means we didn't use the 1/2 again. Just connect it straight. Okay, this is a small bust, so we don't need this one again. So like I said, the neckline, we don't need this upper neckline. We are going to have a neckline of the corset. So what you want to do now, what you have between the bust, the distance between the bust and the under bust, you just mark it as a guide. You just mark it round in a circular form with our tape at this bust point. Mark 1/2 inch round. It's going to serve as a guide when we are drawing out our cup. So we have this circular format after marking it round. I hope you can see it. Let me use the pencil to highlight it. We have this. Can you see that? So having done this, we'll mark our shoulder dart. You simply take 1/2 of the shoulder. So whatever your shoulder is, just fold your tape into 1/2 like this, into 2 like this, to get 1/2 of it. And fold it like this, and then we connect this to the bust point. Use your long ruler. So this is what we have. And just use the marker to highlight it. So having taken the bust out, the shoulder dart, The next thing you want to do now is to mark out the bust separation, that separation between the two breasts of the corset. We are using 1/2 inch for that, 1/2 inch. So mark 1/2 inch. Our paper is on fold, so 1/2 inch means on fold means that it's going to be 1 inch. Okay, and then we determine the neckline. If you want, remember this is a corset with shoulder and the armhole. Okay, so the armhole is part of the corset. So you're going to determine the coverage that you want for your bust. If you want to maintain these 3 inches or you want to go above it, okay, so that your bust will be covered. Okay, so you can decide to go 1 inch above this curve that you already have. If you do that, that means from the shoulder you have 6 inches, and then to where this bust coverage is, the original one, we have 7. So you're going to determine what you want. Do you want to maintain this, or you want to go up? Okay, so whichever one that you have decided, you just connect it. So you connect it to this middle part, and then this middle part, the depth is 8 inches. So you also decide if you want to maintain this 8 inches as the neckline depth, or if you want to go down. Okay, so if you want to maintain this 8 inches, then you simply just curve from here. You mark it to the point that you want to use. If you are using here, that means from here you connect to this place. If you are using above here, that means from here you connect to this place. Okay, so you have to decide what you want. So for me, I'll just go here. We have 3 inches. I'll just go 1/2 inch above, so that from the top we have 6.5. And then with my French curve, I'm going to connect this point to this. I also mark the 1/2 inch here. So with the French curve, just draw that out. So this is the top of the first cup. So after you have determined that, the next thing you want to do is to connect the cup to this underbust. Okay, let me mark the same 1/2 inch down like this. So you just place your French curve like this. Remember, we are using here as our guide, so the bust has to sit properly inside the cup. And then remember our 1/2 inch that we have taken here. So you just mark out the cup. So we have drawn 1 cup, remaining the second side. Okay, so for this, we are going to close up this shoulder dart. Okay, and then so that we can be able to draw this other cup. Okay, because we are going to have, it's just going to be one piece. We are not going to have any division here. So we are going to close up this dart so that we can have the corset as one. Okay, and then we are going to also determine the cup of this other side. Okay, so let's take it one step at a time. Having formed this cup, let me just highlight what we have so far. Okay, that is what we have. So this is one cup. So let's close up this shoulder dart. To do that, we open up this waist dart. You just close it like this. So with the masking tape, you tape it down. So we have closed up our shoulder dart. So let's impute our measurements. The bust circumference divided by 4. Let's see where it is. I'll put our measurement here, 8.5 here. Okay, so we'll get the midpoint of this our armhole. Get the midpoint like this. So we connect it to this side, to this under bust, to form the other cup. So we have gone beyond that guide because towards the armhole area our bust is fuller. Okay, so we have gotten that. I'll just use the marker to realize it. So the next thing now is to determine the wideness of the shoulder. The wideness of the shoulder. So the shoulder does not need to be too much, to be too wide. So you can use the half of the shoulder that you already have, or you can decide to make yours 2.5. So it depends on you what you want. So I'm going to maintain what I have here as the shoulder width. Okay, and then at this point I will mark the bust in by 1/2 inch. Okay, like this, by half, and then I'll use my French curve to connect it to this shoulder. So I'll have something like this. So you can also decide to use a straight ruler. So it depends on how you want it. From this curve, you either use your French curve or you just use a straight ruler to connect it like this. So if you want it to look more like a strap, then you can use this straight roller is better. So we have completed our one piece. So the next thing is to cut it out. So before you cut it out, go ahead to also impute your measurements, your bust measurements. You know, we already mark it out here, so go ahead and repeat the same. So whatever yours is, your bust circumference divided by 4, you mark it. And then the waist, the under bust, sorry, you mark what you have on the other bust. Your under bust circumference divided by 4. Mine is 6.75. And then the dart that you have. Now our dart has opened, so we now have 2 inches dart. You add your dart. Then on the waistline, you also take the measurement, the waist circumference divided by 4, and then you impute the dart that you have. You replace the dart, sorry. You replace the dart. So you're going to have something like this. And then you also go ahead to add in, when you are transferring to fabric, you can now add in your seam allowance. So you are going to be cutting this out to see what our pattern look like. Before you cut it out, if you have your tracing wheel, just trace out what you have so that it can appear on the other side. So let's cut out our pattern. Before you do that, just label it. This is the center front, then this is the side front. Okay. So I'll cut out this center front. Watch how I'm going to cut it. Be careful so that you don't This is our center front. Now when you are cutting this cup area, you only cut here and here. Don't extend to this side because it's one cup. You only remove this dart. Repeat same here. So you are not cutting through. If you cut through, that means you have done 2 pieces. I'll cut out the side. So these are the sides. This is the armhole area. So we want us to be straight. Let me remark this in here. So this is our single piece corset pattern. For the front bodies. So this is center cut. And then these are the sides. So this is what our single piece corset pattern for the front bodies look like. This is what it looks like. Okay, so before I explain how to sew it and then how to cut on our fabric, we just cut out the back pattern. See, this one is just one piece, so let's cut out the back pattern. I'll just use half of the paper and do just one side. Okay, so I have my shoulder marked out, shoulder divided by 2, and then I have the shoulder slant, and then I have the armhole curve, armhole depth, which is 7 inches. So let's impute the armhole curve, get the midpoint, and then we put our bust circumference divided by 2 on this line, divided by 4, bust divided by 4 to get the armhole length. So the French curve from this midpoint to connect to this. So this is the back armhole length and armhole depth. So this is our chest line. I'll just remark it here so I can have a straight line. So this is our chest line, this is our bust line, this is the under bust, though we don't need it, and then this is the waistline. So just use the marker to highlight out what we have so far. We don't need this neckline here, we need a deeper neckline, so we'll talk about the neckline. So mark out, so I'm just using the marker to highlight what we have already. So this is what we have so far. Let's label our pattern. This is the chest line, the bust line. This is under bust, but we don't need it there. This is the waistline. So like we did in front, I will put the dart, which is the bust palm measurement, the bust span divided by 2, which is 3.5. I'll mark it on this bust line, also on the waistline. Okay, you can just mark it all the way to the chest line. Connect that with a ruler. Then just like we did before, get the shoulder dart, the shoulder, divide it by 2, connect that to the bust point. Like so. Then for the regular waist dart I will take is usually half inch, and then we go above the bust by 1 inch. That is the regular dart, waist dart that we do take. So for this back pattern, we can just maintain this regular dart. We don't need to extend it. So just let's leave it at half inch, but connect it to this, to to 1 inch above the bust area. So let me use this marker to re-highlight it. So this is the dart line, 1/2 inch on both sides. This is the back pattern, and then 1 inch below the chest or 1 inch above the bust, whichever one you want to do, they are the same. Then you connect in a triangular form. Like so. So to this point, you connect the shoulder dart. The back pattern, that's practically all, very simple. So the next thing is to determine the neckline that you want to have. The wideness of the shoulder has to be the same with the front pattern. It has to be the same. So you can just place your front pattern to make sure that they are the same. So it's the same mark. So as using the same mark, okay, that is the wideness. And then from there you determine the depth of the neckline. Our neckline is going to start from here. Okay, so you can determine the neck depth that you want. Whether you want to go 1 inch below this chest line. So the neck depth that you want totally depends on you. Depends on you. And then impute the bust circumference. We've already repeated it here, just repeat it here. Bust circumference divided by 4. And then the little dots we have here, you replace it. Then go to the waistline, impute the waist measurement, quarter of your waist measurement. These dots that we took, you replace it. When you are cutting on your fabric, you don't add the allowance. So let's just cut it out and see what it looks like. Like I said before, I'm going to be using half of the paper, so I don't have my papers are finished, so I'm going to economize my paper. So this is our back pattern. So you are going to have 2 of this. We have 2 of this. So let's explain how to cut on our fabric. With this fabric, though I'm not going to cut it. So if you want to cut your pattern out, this center front and this, in short, the front piece, you cut them on fold so that you duplicate it. So you get your fabric, you fold it into 2 like this, and then you place your pattern. So let's deal with the center front. So this will be enough for me to explain what I want to explain. So this is one yard of fabric. You fold it into two. You take the center front, you place it on it like this. Okay. And then you cut it out. You add seam allowance. Add seam allowance to this down part, 0.5 seam allowance. Add seam allowance to the side. Okay. Add seam allowance around here. Add seam allowance here. Then add seam allowance. In short, add seam allowance all around it. Then you pick this. You are still going to have two. You are still going to cut out two of this. Okay. So just add your seam allowance around it. You can add 0.25 seam allowance around it. Here will still be open like this. And then you also cut the center front, the side front. The side front, don't forget that we have not added our seam allowance. So you add the sewing allowance to the side, like 1.5. Then you add half inch here, half inch here. You also add half inch around here. Okay, it's only here you're going to add about 1.5 inches or 2 inches. So that is how to cut the front panel. And then for the back piece, so you are true, when you want to cut out the back piece, your fabric should be on fold. Your fabric should be on fold, and then you place the back piece. I did not add zipper allowance to this back piece, so if you want yours to have a zipper, you add your zipper allowance. Add like 1.5 inch zipper allowance. Okay, you can also decide to make yours with loop. So let's explain with the zipper allowance. If you are adding zipper allowance, you add 1.5 or 1 inch depending on the zipper allowance you are using before you place your pattern like this. And then you add half inch here. Then you're also going to add the seam allowance by the side, by 1.5 inches seam allowance. Okay, you're going to add seam allowance here, and then you can add 0.25 inches here. Of course, the shoulder you need half inch seam allowance, and then you can add the same 0.5 or 0.25 inch seam allowance around here as well. So that is how to cut out the pattern. So after cutting out your main fabric, you're also going to cut out the lining. Okay, so you cut out the lining as well. Get your lining, cut them out. So let's talk about the sewing. When you want to sew, you don't need to cut out this back, that you simply just fold it. You simply just fold it in like this. Okay, this is where the dart stops. And just sew like this. And simply sew like this. I'll just use pins to hold that to show you what it looks like. So this is what we have for the back. So if you want to have a zipper, like I said before, add zipper allowance. If you don't want a zipper and you want to have a loop at the back, what you do is to reduce this by 1.5 inch, depending on how wide you want your back loop to be. Don't forget that when you mark 1.5, it means that you are going to have 3 inches exposed, because you are still going to have this, whatever you have on one side. This is just one part of the back piece. You are still going to have another one this way. Okay, so you can go ahead to mark out how wide you want your back opening to be. It can be 1 inch or 1.5, but I will not advise you to go more than 1.5. You mark your 1.5 like this. And then you cut this out. You cut it out. You cut it out. And then you are going to create your loops. If you are using an eyelet, then you just mark your eyelet points. You mark the eyelet. Okay. You mark the eyelet points like this. But if you are using a loop, then you create your loop. You can use your fabric to create your loop, or use your cotton bias to create your loop. So that is if you don't want a zipper. Okay, so if you want a zipper, it means that you're going to have the zipper allowance added to this pattern. So that is all for the back piece. So let me explain how to sew the front piece. So to sew the front piece, you're going to join the center front with the side front. You join them together first. So that is why we needed to add the seam allowance. Don't forget, we have seam allowance here. We also have seam allowance here, half-inch seam allowance, half-inch. Then we have side seam allowance, 1.5. So let me just use the pin to pin it to show us what it will look like after sewing. You sew with the same allowance that I have given. Then you also place this side, and you also sew with the same allowance. So at the end of the day, I'm going to have something like this. And then for the cup, you do this like this, and then sew here. Sew it. You sew it such that it will end in this corner. Let me use the ruler to mark it. And sew such a way that it will end in the corner. Okay, just it's not going to be straight when you are sewing to this place. So this is what it will look like. It will look like this after sewing. You repeat same for the other side. So we're going to have something like this after sewing. So this is just for illustration purpose. Of course, your marks will not be outside. So this is what it's going to look like. Nice cup. And also you also cut out the wording, okay? Before you stitch this together, use it to measure what you are going to cut out. You place this on your wording and just cut it. Cut this breast cup, this breast area. You cut it out on your wording, okay? And then the same way that you have joined, this cup, that is how you also sew the wording. And then you're going to place your wording inside. The wording that you have sewn, you place it inside and sew around it like this. So after you have done that, you can now add it to this, okay? Where you have this joining, you make sure it corresponds with this joining. So you just carefully attach it. To make it easier for you, notch this place like 1/8. Notch this place. Notch this side as well. So let me see if I can just pin it down to show us what it will look like. Okay. Just trying to be careful with the paper so it doesn't tear. So this is paper. I need to have something like this. I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain. So you have something like this. You repeat same for the other side, okay? And then of course, once you are through, you are going to join the back side with the front side. You are going to join their sides together. You join them together as one piece first. You also join the back to this side, okay? And then whatever you have done here, you repeat everything for the lining, okay? After which you now use the lining to turn this. You place the lining on it, front side facing each other. You sew the armhole area, you sew the shoulder, you sew this side, so you sew around, and then use one of the sides to turn it out. So that is all for this one piece corset class. I hope you find these tutorials helpful. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and please, if you have not subscribed to this channel, kindly subscribe to my channel. so that you will be notified each time I make a new video. To the end of this corset class, one piece corset. I hope now you can now make a one piece corset, shoulder corset with armhole. Okay, until next time, I remain G Joy.